It's Monday morning! We're late!
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Monday. It is another week of the Monday Morning Show. I'm Noah.
And I'm Ashley.
And we are your hosts. So we are here to share some Freedom Village news, but first, I'd like to know how your weekend was.
I had a really good weekend.
Was it really good? What did you
really
do?
Good. Well, it was really good that we did some spring cleaning.
Oh,
yes.
It's only the beginning of March.
It was in the 70s last week.
We're ready for spring.
So
Yes.
I'm ready for spring. I wanted the house fresh, so we got the house clean top to bottom.
Ah.
Yes, and so it
Exciting.
felt so good. Had dinner with Grandma.
Oh, yay.
Yeah,
Nice.
nice weekend. How was your weekend?
My weekend was good. I worked a fun local rock show on Friday night, so that was exciting. It's always fun to see what the local musicians are doing versus traveling. So that was really cool, and spent some time with my roommates over the weekend. They're gone all week, so we
Where did
had to
they
have
go?
some. It is Hope Hockey Nationals Week, so they are somewhere coaching and watching hockey.
Nice.
So they're gone for the week, so I have the house to myself, I'm living the dream.
Should we have a party?
Maybe we should have a party.
I like it.
Let's have a party. So it was a good weekend. We had a lot of fun. And now it's March. And that's crazy.
It's unbelievable, actually.
Unbelievable. Should we talk about what we're doing now that it's March?
I guess.
All right, let's
Is that
do
why
it.
we're here?
I think that's why they're here.
Oh, all right.
We could talk to each other
We
all day
could.
long, but nobody else really.
They don't
want to
hear that.
So let's talk about some real things. What are we doing today, Ashley?
Today we are watching another Oscar nominee called American Fiction, and it's based on the 2001 novel Erasure by Percival Everett, and it follows a frustrated novelist who wrote what he thought was a satire, stereotypical black book, only for it to be mistaken by the liberal elite for serious literature and published, and both high sales. It had high sales and critical praise, and kind of the fallout and his reaction to that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that should be a good movie, and that's at 2 p.m. in the
2 p.m. auditorium,
Perfect.
popcorn, candy.
All the good things. And then on Tuesday, we start the day with the Village Artists at 10:30. They are heading over to the Holland Area Arts Council for a special lesson with Sandy Kaufman. Make sure you've signed up on Touchtown, and they are happy to have you.
Yes, they are.
And then in the afternoon, we're gonna do another movie day.
It's movie week.
It's movie week with an S. There's lots of movies.
Movie month.
Movie month. So this afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, we will be watching The Holdovers, which follows a curmudgeonly instructor at a prestigious American school who is forced to remain on campus during Christmas break to babysit the handful of students with nowhere to go. Eventually, he forms an unlikely bond with one of them, who's a brainy, damaged troublemaker. Sounds like fun.
It does sound like fun.
And that is also at 2 o'clock in the auditorium. And again, movie, candy, popcorn, root beer. It's gonna be a great time. And you can see how the movie is.
Absolutely. Wednesday at 2 o'clock, Sandy is teaching a class called Sending Documents Electronically. So getting documents from your phone or your tablet and getting them to somewhere else, to the printer, to another person.
Yeah.
We get people come into the office all the time asking for help. So this is a great class, and head on down Michigan Room at 2 o'clock on Wednesday.
And it's very fitting for tax season.
Oh, yes.
Because you might need to be sending some things to and fro, and this will be very helpful for many people.
Absolutely. At 3 o'clock in the auditorium, Jerry Van Weingarten will be talking about the Arabian Peninsula and its geography. So you won't want to miss that.
Perfect. And in the evening, on Channel 954 at 7:30 p.m., we will be showing Oppenheimer, since we did already show this in the auditorium. This is your chance if you didn't get to see it or just want to see it again on TV at 7:30.
Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock in the auditorium, we have the Holland Symphony Orchestra pre-concert talk. So the director of the orchestra comes in and kind of gives us a little preview of the upcoming concert and talks through the different pieces. It's a great
educational musical moment.
Program, yes, that they put on for us.
It's awesome. And in the evening, we have Don Williams' Funny Sign presentation. That's at 7:15 in the auditorium. And we really aren't fooling around when it comes to this program. But Don Williams is sure to knock your socks off with his funny slideshow. He has done this for several years, and typically we do it a little closer to his favorite day, April Fool's Day. But this year we're doing an early April Fool's Day celebration. We will have some snacks and some wine if you need a little treat. So it'll be great. He's always funny, and the auditorium is always packed. So come early, get your seat, and enjoy.
Oh, that one's so hilarious.
It's so fun.
Friday at 10 a.m., head to the auditorium for Meeting of the Mugs, where you just join your friends and neighbors for a cup of coffee and some good conversation.
Yes, and then at 2 p.m. we have something new. We have the Readers Theater auditions. So for May's talent show, there's some interest in doing a short Readers Theater comedy skit and performing that in May. So in order to do that, we've got to have a cast.
Of course.
So Jim Query will be in the Michigan Room on Friday to do some auditions for the Readers Theater. There's no preparation necessary. You don't have to stand. You don't have to memorize anything. You just have to show up and have a good sense of humor and see what happens. So stop on by. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to Jim, but we hope you stop by and give it a shot.
Well, there's a lot to do at 2 o'clock on Friday.
There sure is. It's a busy place around here.
If you'd like to get out, we've got our weekly SAD walk, Fighting Seasonal Affective Disorder, which hopefully no one's got it too bad after those sunny days last week. But if you still do, or just want to get outside, 2 o'clock, meet at the front door and we'll go for a nice walk.
So at 2 p.m. we have Killers of the Flower Moon, and this movie shows real love crosses paths with unspeakable betrayal as Molly Burkhart, a member of the Osage Nation, tries to save her community from a spree of murders fueled by oil and greed.
Ooh.
And this movie is based off of a book. I have not yet read it, but I've heard it's fantastic, and I know the movie must be pretty good too if it was nominated. So stop up in the auditorium to watch that.
Fantastic. Well, Saturday morning, we're going to kick it off as always at 7:45 in the bistro with our weekly pancake breakfast.
Are you awake at 7:45 on Saturday morning?
Not if I had my choice. Yes, though. Most Saturdays I am. I have a baby that does not sleep much later than that.
Oh, silly babies.
Silly babies.
Don't they know?
No. At 1:30 on Saturday, if you want to do a fun Easter-themed craft, come to the Arts and Crafts room at 1:30, and we will be dyeing eggs with silk. Yeah, so we wrap the eggs with silk, put them in some hot water and some other stuff, and they take on the print of the whatever's on the silk onto the eggs.
Can you reuse the silk after you've dyed it, or is it like a one and done sort of a thing?
Ooh, I'm not sure. We might have to try.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of some grown-up Easter eggs.
Cool.
Yeah.
How fun is that?
So $5.
Yes.
Arts and Crafts room, 1:30.
Sign up on Touchdown. And in the evening, we have the Holland Symphony Orchestra concert. It is their surprise symphony on Saturday night, so that bus leaves at 7 p.m.
And that is our week.
That is our week. What a good week.
That's a great week.
Oof, I'm tired just talking about it.
We get lots of movies in.
Lots of movies.
Lots of music.
Oh man, can I eat popcorn 3 times this week?
I think it's important that you do.
I will definitely try.
You can do it.
We have faith.
So I forgot to mention one thing when we were talking about our weekends.
Oh, did you?
Oh, I did.
Tell me more.
There's one thing I did that I've been doing a lot lately, and I kind of wanted to take you all on my journey with me.
Oh.
Yes. So I've been making sourdough, and so I would like you to enjoy the sourdough sagas.
The sourdough sagas?
Maybe it's not that dramatic, but I'd like to show you what this looks like.
The sourdough sagas. It needs its own weekly snippet. We got to check in on your starter every week. What's your starter's name?
Eloise.
Eloise. We got to check in on Eloise, see how our girl's doing.
Yeah.
Let's check it out now.
The key to a good sourdough is a good starter, and that's where we're starting this morning. I just took my starter out of the refrigerator, and now it's time to feed her so she's thriving and awake before we can get to baking. We take equal parts starter, filtered water, and unbleached all-purpose flour, and we mix them all up. I've wanted to make sourdough for a very long time, but I was nervous of all the rules that surrounded baking sourdough bread. Recently, a friend of mine got into it and she said, it's not that difficult, you just gotta learn a few key concepts and then you're off. And so I had her give me a little bit of her starter and went from there, and after doing a little bit of research, I have fallen in love with it and am baking almost every day some weeks. I recently had a week where I used over 20 pounds of flour making sourdough creations and realized that this was not sustainable to keep buying that much flour, and also my family of 4 could never eat that much bread, nor did I have enough friends to gift this much bread to. If your starter stays out on the counter, she has to be continually fed because you don't want her to die if she gets too hungry. But if you want to take a break between baking, you can just pop her in the fridge and she'll stay dormant, and you just have to feed every week or so if she's staying in the fridge. But I usually put her away for a few days, then pull her out, feed her, and then she grows and is ready to bake. And that's exactly what happened here. Before I fed her this morning, she had been in the fridge for a couple days. Now that Eloise is fed and mixed in very thoroughly, it's time to set her aside and let her grow. I'm going to mark the jar so that I know what level she was at right when she's fed, and we want to make sure that the starter doubles in size before it's time to bake. Eloise took about 6 to 7 hours to double in size this day. Sometimes I'll put her in the microwave with the door shut, and that will allow for a little bit warmer environment and she'll grow much faster, but it just depends on what's going on. Watching this video of her grow sped up really shows how alive she is, as you can see all those bubbles coming up. Okay, so now it's time to bake. And like I said, there's only a few ingredients in sourdough. We are going to add in 100 grams of our starter. And as you can see, I forgot to change it over to grams from pounds. I don't usually like to measure so accurately. I like to just throw things in as I cook, but for something like this, it's super important. It's basically just a science experiment. So we've got 100 grams of starter added to the bowl. The next thing I'm going to do is add some room temperature filtered water, 350 grams. I actually fill up this water bottle from my refrigerator filtered water, and I set it out on the counter. So I keep this bottle full and set to the side all the time so that it comes to room temperature, and then when I need it for my dough, it is right there for me. Now it's time to mix up my water and my starter. I like to do this before I add anything else, just to help get things mixed more evenly. And what I'm using here is actually a Danish dough whisk. And this whisk is different from a regular whisk because it's flat, it's got a few different coils, and it's a lot better for mixing up sticky bread type doughs, and it also helps you get through it without over mixing. And it's something I actually got as a gift years ago, but was never really into baking much, so I hadn't used it until I started this journey, and now I'm very grateful for it. So here I'm putting my mixture back onto my scale and zeroing out my scale. So now I'm going to go in and measure 500 grams of all-purpose unbleached flour. And I've played around so far with using some different flours. I've used bread flour, I've used all-purpose, I've used a mixture of both. And I haven't found a huge difference yet, but I'm still fairly early into this sourdough journey, so I think I'll keep experimenting with different flours. I'm planning on trying to use some rye flour, use some whole wheat flour, just to try all across the board and see what works best for my doughs. I lied to you earlier when I said it was only flour and water. I forgot one ingredient, and it's a very important ingredient. We need salt. I add 11 grams of salt to this mixture, and my first batch of sourdough I ever made, I tried to add the salt without measuring, and I added far too little salt, and I threw the loaf of bread away, and I learned that that is one of the most important ingredients in this bread. And so now that we've got our ingredients, I'm using our whisk and mixing it up, and what I want this dough to turn into is just a really loose and shaggy dough. I'm not looking for a nice formed ball. I just want to get all of the flour mixed in. I scrape as much of it off the edge of the bowl as I can and get it mixed in as well as possible. Another reason this whisk is great is because cleaning out the clumps of dough are so much easier than it would be with a traditional whisk. I can't even imagine the headache trying to pick out dough from 100 different little prongs would be. Let's just take a closer look at this shaggy dough, and now it's time to wrap her up and tuck her aside. And as you can see, I'm using one of my larger bowls, and my bowl cover doesn't fit perfectly on this, and so I struggle with it quite a bit. But we get her on, and we're just going to cover up, set it aside for about an hour. So our dough has been sitting for about an hour, and so now we need to start the process called stretch and fold. And it's exactly what it sounds like. We pull, stretch the dough, fold it over. Turn the bowl a quarter turn. And so we do this around the bowl. And what this process is doing is actually helping to strengthen the gluten in the bread. And so we're going to do this a number of times over the next couple hours. That's what it looks like after our first turn. We can see that it's starting to become more of a traditional dough. We're going to set her aside again for another half an hour. We are back another half an hour later and ready for another round of stretch and folds. We are doing the same process again. This time, as I'm pulling it, I can tell that the gluten has developed and strengthened. The dough is stronger and it looks more like a ball of dough. Every time it gets to be more of a traditional dough. So we're going to cover her up and set her aside for another 30 minutes. I usually perform about 4 sets of stretch and folds before we move on to the next process. As you can see, she's not stretching nearly as much this time. It's because she's stronger. So I start to do a process where I kind of let the dough fold over my hands, and then I turn it and let it fold over my hands again. After stretch and folds, we're going to cover up our dough again and set it aside, and it's time for bulk fermentation. And we're going to let this sit and rise until it has at least doubled in size. Usually this takes about 8 to 12 hours depending on the temperature of your kitchen. I let my dough bulk ferment overnight, and now it is time to work on the next process. We are going to shape the dough. So after cleaning my counter, I sprinkle some flour down just to make sure they don't stick. And we want to try and let gravity do most of the work getting the dough out of the bowl, but sometimes the edges need a little bit of help coming out. And so what we're going to do first is stretch this out into a big rectangle. And we are going to do what we're calling lamination of the dough. So similar to like a croissant or something where you're creating layers with lamination, this one we are going to stretch out and then we're going to fold it up. But if you're going to add any flavoring into your dough, this is the time to do it. So I've decided to create this dough. It's going to be an everything bagel seasoning and Parmesan cheese blend. And so I've got my dough flattened out, and I'm going to sprinkle a generous amount of the seasoning and the cheese onto the dough. From there, we're going to start folding it up, and you're going to fold it in thirds over one way and then fold it back over, and that's going to create the layers of the dough as well as the seasoning. I'm going to add a little more on this top layer just to make sure we get some yumminess throughout. And then what we're going to do is we're going to roll the dough up, and we're going to kind of try and make it tight, and we're tucking the edge over. We don't want a lot of seams. And so now we've got a nice ball, and what I'm doing here is picking up a little flour because it's a little sticky. We're going to do our first shaping now, so we're going to push the dough forward and pull it backwards while kind of tucking underneath. We're trying to create a lot of tension on the top of the dough so it's a nice smooth top. Then we're going to set this dough aside for a little while and just let it rest. About 20 minutes later, we're going to come back and do our second shaping. So that first shaping was just to kind of teach the dough what we want it to do, and now we're going to finalize. So we're going to do the same push and pull method to create a nice tension-filled top of the dough. And then we're going to do what we're calling our cold proofing. So we're going to get a bowl, we're going to put a tea towel in it. I've got a set of towels that are just used for dough. Sprinkle a little bit of flour inside there just to prevent the dough from sticking to the towel, and flip it over upside down. If the bottom of your dough has any seams, this is the time you're going to pinch them shut and make sure they are good to go. And then we're going to put this in the fridge from anywhere from 8 to 48 hours. Our dough has come out of the refrigerator now, and now it is finally time to bake. And it already smells so good with the everything bagel and the Parmesan cheese. I cannot wait to eat this bread. I'm going to flip it back out upside down onto the counter. Generally, I would flip it onto parchment paper, but I was completely out, so we're just going to do it this way today. And the one thing we need to do before we get it in the oven is we need to cut the top. So I have what is called a lame, and this is used to score the dough. And we want to make one very large cut across the top. And you want to make this fairly deep because this is what's going to allow your bread to rise and grow and expand while in the oven. And then I've been working on trying to create some pretty designs on my bread, some branches, some flowers. This is not my strong suit yet, so I'm going to give this another try today, but I need a lot of practice on this. We preheated our oven to 450 degrees and made sure our cast iron Dutch oven was in the oven while it was preheating. And so it is screaming hot. We take it out and we put our bread in there. Put the lid back on with a hot pad, of course, and get her into the oven for about 30 minutes before we check back in. After about 30 minutes, we want to take the lid off of our Dutch oven. The bread has baked nicely, as you can see, but it's not dark enough. So we're going to let the bread bake for another 15 to 20 minutes uncovered so she can get a nice golden brown color. And here we are, our finished product. There's a lot of work that goes into creating this bread, but I love knowing that I'm feeding my family homemade bread, gut healthy, and I know what's in it. If you're interested in starting your own sourdough journey, let me know and I will bring you some starter. Thanks for watching.
Well, Ashley, I am so glad that you took us on that little journey, but unfortunately, I am now very hungry. So I'm hoping you brought some bread.
Oh, I did.
Oh, great. Let's go eat some bread. Okay, well, everybody, that is our week. It has been another wonderful Monday morning. We are so excited for everything we have going on at Freedom Village this week. And until next time, that's Ashley.
That's Noah.
And this has been Monday Morning. Bye.
Bye.